Is it possible? Now listen. Is it possible that the very reason you seek God is the reason you don't find God? Yes. Yes. Is it possible that the prayer, the need, the purpose you hold up in your hands like an offering is in fact the veil that hides the presence you claim to want? Yes. And it isn't because God withholds. No, no. God withholds nothing. It is because the mind that bargains cannot see what does not bargain. The moment, mark this, the moment God is sought as a tool to get peace, or a healed body, or a spouse, or a sign, or a purpose, or a career, in that instant God ceases to be God in our consciousness and becomes a means to an end. And a means is not the infinite. A means is a thing among things. God cannot be a thing among things. Now don't run away with the idea that I am condemning need or scorning prayer. That is not the truth. A human being cries. A human being aches. A human being fears the rent and the test and the diagnosis. A human being can't help that. A human being can't help that. At first. We are not condemned for wanting relief. Oh no. We are corrected for using God as a bargaining partner. If you, then I. That's the old contract. And who signs it? A frightened self attempting to secure itself by holy language. And it will not work. Not because the words are wrong, but because the center is wrong. The center is getting. All right. Let us say it plainly so there is no confusion. The very instant your prayer takes this form, God, get me, give me, grant me, seeking becomes getting. And getting is the posture of lack trying to fill itself. Getting is the hand reaching outward into effects, into externals, into persons and positions and proofs. And that very posture, that very inner reaching, is the curtain. You can reach all day and all night and never touch infinity. Because infinity is not outside to be reached. Infinity is the life within to be recognized. Now tell me what I would ever need of you, or of any person, if God is the source of my being and the infinity of my being. Nothing. Nothing. If that is true, and it is, then the only honest approach to God is not negotiation, but recognition. Not do for me, but be as me. Not come and fix, but reveal yourself where I stand. Do you see the shift? It is as subtle as a thread and as decisive as a sword. In one motion, you cut the knot of getting and free the flow of giving, because source known overflows of itself. Don't forget this. We will return to it again and again. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. We will expose this getting spirituality and its respectable disguises. We will see how it reproduces the very anxieties it tries to bribe away. And then, quietly, we will practice a purer seeking, not for outcomes, but for God as God, until the motive is washed and the inner eye opens, and the outer takes care of itself by law. For tonight, let us accept this one foundation. God cannot be used. God can only be known. And known, God is enough. Now let us be honest with ourselves. Not with our ideals, honest with our hearts. Listen to how refined the bargain can sound. I want to know God so I can find my purpose. I want to know God so I can stop this anxiety. I want to know God so I can heal this body. I want to know God so I can fix this marriage. I want to know God so I can prosper. I want to know God so I can be protected. And then, when the polish wears thin, the old list slips out. So I can be vindicated. So I can triumph over them. So I can be somebody. So I can have a sign. Do you see how it moves from noble to obvious, from altar to marketplace? The same thread runs through every line. So I can get. All right. Now hear the form of the contract. I'll give you prayer. I'll give you attendance. I'll give you purity. I'll give you service. You give me results. That is spiritual commerce. That is the sacred counter where we lay down words and tears and hours as currency, waiting for the clerk of heaven to hand across a parcel labeled peace, health, purpose, protection. And when the parcel is delayed, we increase the payment, longer prayer, stricter rule, harder effort, because we still imagine a God who sells and a self who buys. Your first reaction is, but aren't those good things? Yes. Yes. They are good human needs. A human being can't help that, at first. But tell me, what is the center? God or the thing? If God is the center, the need becomes a transparency through which the presence shines. If the thing is the center, God becomes a tool we wield against fear. There is your diagnosis. The motive reveals the consciousness, and the consciousness determines what we experience as God. If we come with a bargaining mind, we will meet a bargaining deity, our own image, who withholds, measures, and negotiates. If we come to recognize source, we meet presence, whole, unmeasured, already enough. Now don't think this is only for the obvious graspers. Oh no. Ministry itself is often getting with a halo. A bigger church, a greater organ, a larger mailing list, more influence, a firmer certainty, a stronger identity as the one who knows. Same old getting wearing Sunday clothes. Using God to gain a following, to secure moral superiority, to silence our inner doubt with the applause of an audience. Still commerce, still the market mind. You can preach the Beatitudes and never leave the bargain if the secret aim is to be necessary. Here is the divide. Humanness is getting. Spirituality is giving, being. This is not first about behavior, it is about center. Two people may do the same act, one as trade, the other as overflow. One binds, one frees. The law is unbreakable. There are no detached outer effects. What you hold as cause, in here, must right itself out there. Treat God as your instrument, and your life will be a workshop of instruments, forever tinkering with effects. Recognize God as your source, and life becomes a river that gives of itself without strain. So tonight we do a gentle but unflinching audit. We listen under our prayers for the if-then. We feel for the subtle scent of purchase. And when we find it, no shame, no scolding, we lay it down. We come empty of deals and full of willingness. Here I am. Be as thou art. In that shift, the transaction ends, and seeking begins to be communion. Yes. Yes. That is the diagnosis. And that is the door. Now you come to the law, not my law, not your opinion, but the law that stands whether we nod or resist. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Remember that. Repeat it, not as a slogan, as a diagnosis. If there are no detached effects, then the motives, the fears, the secret calculations that make up our inward climate must right themselves as the weather of our days. And therefore, when I seek God for something, I have already established lack as cause, fear as atmosphere, incompleteness as center, and then I must see more lack, more occasions to fear, more signs of incompleteness to chase and manage. That is not punishment. That is law. All right, let us trace it. I say, I want God so I can have relief. At that instant, what have I affirmed? That I do not have relief. That peace is outside awaiting delivery. So I begin watching the body. Every sensation becomes a verdict. I watch the bank. Every digit becomes a prophecy. I watch the relationship. Every look is a referendum. And the more I watch, the more I enthrone externals as my cause. Do you see the trap? The very seeking for proof binds me to the proving ground. The very prayer for evidence keeps me stationed at the window, measuring clouds, and so I never turn inward, where the sun already is. Take a simple picture. The salesman who needs the deal goes in with the smell of hunger on him. He speaks the product, but the customer hears the need. He over-explains, over-promises, tightens at the close, and the deal slips. Why? There are no detached outer effects. The consciousness of lack produced the very lack it feared. Or the parent who needs the child to make them a good parent. Perform for me, validate me, be my report card. That atmosphere of need breeds either rebellion or dead compliance with resentment underneath. Why? Because the child is being used as an effect to fix an inner cause, and consciousness writes itself across the household. Or the seeker who needs God to deliver results. Watch them. They pray, but their ear is at the door of the world. Has it changed yet? Did it work? They call that prayer. It is not communion. It is measurement. Now don't misunderstand me. We are not scolding a beginner for hurting. A human being feels pain. A human being checks the thermometer. A human being can't help that, at first. But hear the principle. The moment you make the thermometer your oracle, you will live by numbers. The moment you make the bank balance your savior, you will live by balances. The moment you make the other person your peace, you will live by their weather. And then, no matter how many times you say God, you are still acknowledging effects as cause. You can pray all day and all night and never touch God if the prayer itself is a lever trying to move the world. Law answers you in the language you are speaking. Measurement produces more to measure. Manipulation produces more to manipulate. Grasping produces more mirages to grasp. Is it possible to flip this? Yes. Yes. But first, see why the reason is the block. The reason is the mask of lack. The reason assigns divinity to the outcome and demotes God to a tool. And when God is a tool in your consciousness, your life becomes a shed full of tools, fixing, tinkering, adjusting, waiting for confirmation from the latest project. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Until the motive is reversed, the movie on the screen will keep projecting the same storyline. The hero chasing, the prize receding, the credits never rolling. Now let us hold still in that recognition, not to despair, but to be honest, because honesty with law is the first mercy. Now we come to the great reversal. Not a refinement, not an improvement of your bargain, no, a reversal. God is not your answer. God is your source. Hear it, not as a pretty sentence, as a law. God is the source of my being and the infinity of my being. If this is true, and it is, then tell me, what could be added to infinity? Nothing. Nothing. Since I am one with my source, one, not two, nothing can be added to me. Not peace added from outside, not worth added from applause, not safety added from insurance. Already in oneness, all that the Father hath is mine. Already. All right. Do you see what this does to seeking? If God is source, seeking ceases to be acquisition and becomes recognition. Not God, come to my scene and fix it, but God, reveal thyself as the life I am. That is not a request for shipment. That is an unveiling of what is. Seek God to find God. Seek God to know God. Seek God because God is. The moment you shift to recognition, the nervous bargaining quiets. The orphan voice, please prove that I am not alone, loses its urgency because sonship is realized. I and the Father are one. Not as a future promotion, as identity. Now your first reaction is, but then what of the body? What of the rent? Does this mean we ignore? No, no. It means we stop worshiping effects. In the degree that consciousness recognizes its source, effects reconfigure by law. The body that was being bribed and measured relaxes under the government of wholeness. The rent that was an idol, threatening, dictating your mood, becomes an item in a ledger, and provision appears in channels you could not coerce because supply is not in channels. Supply is in God, and God finds channels. Seek not what ye shall eat. Your heavenly Father knoweth. That is not poetry. That is mechanics of spirit. Now do not imagine that recognition makes us passive. Oh no, it makes us free. Free from the fever of outcomes. Free to act without clutching. Free to move as instrument, not as claimant. You still answer the phone. You still keep your word. You still go to the doctor if you go. But the center is different. No pleading, no magic, no terror. You are not using God. You are letting God be God as you. And then activity becomes giving. Words become bread cast upon the waters, not bait for a catch. Remember, there are no detached outer effects. If you treat God as a supplement, you remain a patient waiting for a dose. If you recognize God as source, you awaken as the life in which doses and days and dollars appear and disappear without threatening you, because they are not your life. Your life is God. Seek God to find God. Seek God to know God. Seek God because God is. And in that holy simplicity, the bargaining mind goes silent, and a quiet certainty rises of its own nature. Already, already, already. Now let us take up the most respectable idol in our time. Purpose. I'm seeking God to find my purpose. Noble words, inspiring words. But listen beneath them. What is that, finally, but a search for self-completion? Be honest with me. Isn't it often a way of saying, give me a guarantee I will not waste my life? Give me a shield against uncertainty. Give me a proof of worth. Give me a map that spares me from risk. In other words, give me safety. Give me identity. Give me a possession I can hold up to the world and to my own fear and say, see, I'm real. A human being can't help that, at first. But as long as purpose is sought to complete a self, we are still at the counter. still conducting commerce, still getting. All right, here is the law again, so you cannot be confused. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. So if my purpose quest is the consciousness of incompleteness, then incompleteness must write itself into my days as perpetual second-guessing, as hunting for signs, as comparing with others, as the anxiety of missing it, losing it, being late to it, never measuring up to it. Purpose as possession breeds watchfulness that is really fear. It smells like this: checking inboxes for confirmation, listening to praise as oxygen and to criticism as assassination, clinging to titles, chasing strategies, collecting mentors like charms. Why? Because the self is trying to hold a thing called my purpose to make itself safe. And the more it grasps, the more it proves its premise. I am not yet whole. Now set beside it the other stance: purpose as expression. Not a thing you get, a life that gives. Not a badge, a flow. Do you see the distinction? One is anxious, one is generous. One measures, one pours. One bargains for meaning, one reveals meaning by being. Hear the reframing and let it strike like a bell. You do not get a purpose and then live. You live from God, and purpose appears as the fruit. Just as no tree goes shopping for fruit, no soul centered in source goes shopping for assignments. Expression follows life by law. Since I am one with my source, one, not two, expression is inevitable. The branch does not demand a map. It abides, and the sap determines the season, the bloom, the yield. That is not passivity. That is trust in law. Now watch what changes when this reversal is accepted, even a little. Activity continues. Oh yes. You write, you teach, you build, you parent, you serve. But the center is no longer, what does this make of me? The center is, what of God is given here? And from that center, the so-called outer world reconfigures by law. People feel the absence of demand and draw near. Doors open without your pounding. Closed doors do not threaten because they are not your life. You are not seeking to get a role to become yourself. You are letting God be God as you, and roles appear and disappear like waves without changing the sea. Now you see why noble motives fail when they are put to work to complete the self. They smell like getting, and getting perpetuates lack. And you see, too, why one truth, embodied, dissolves the whole frantic search. We do not need a catalog of reasons for living. We need a change of center. Take any one statement of truth. I and the Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. God is the source of my being and the infinity of my being. And practice it until the itch to be completed by purpose quiets. Then purpose will not be your project, it will be your overflow. Then you will not carry a mission, the life will carry you. And that, my friends, is freedom from the idol and the anxiety that bows before it. Now let us make this very simple. So simple that the bargaining mind cannot hide in complexity. One statement of truth contains all the truth there is in the world. Truth is one. It cannot be multiplied and it cannot be divided. Don't think that if you could only remember 99 more statements, your prayer would be 99 times more effective. That's not true. One truth realized does the work. Because truth is not an accumulation. Truth is a presence. When did 2 times 2 begin being 4? It didn't begin. It is. So it is with spirit. God is. Therefore, supply is. Therefore, life is. Therefore, peace is. Not to be shipped, to be recognized. All right, take one. I and the Father are one. Or, if that sings in you, all that the Father hath is mine, already mine. Or, very simply, God is, therefore I am. Any one is enough. Now what do you do with it? You do not use it as a charm to get. You rest in it to know. You let it be your treatment, by which I mean you bring your attention home to it, not to make externals behave, but to unmask the lie of separation in you. When the old ache rises, fear for the body, the bill, the reputation, don't rush outward for proof. Bring the ache under the light of your one truth. I and the Father are one. Not to change a temperature, not to inflate a bank, not to silence a critic, but to end the transaction inside you by recognizing what already is. Do you see how this breaks the bargain? If it is already true, I cannot bribe God to make it true. If oneness is the fact, then all my promises, vows, payments, sacrifices, those were addressed to a salesman that never existed. The instant I take my stand in already mine, the market closes. The orphan ceases its pleading because sonship is no longer a hope. It is identity. And in that identity, the hand opens, the measuring stops, and life begins to flow forth as giving, because source recognized can only express. Your first reaction is, but I don't know enough truth. That's not true. There isn't anybody within range of my voice who hasn't enough understanding to begin, if they will practice one truth. You don't need the library tonight. You don't need the diploma. You don't need the approval of the religious world. You need willingness. Willingness to let one statement govern your inner weather for 5 minutes, then 10, then as often as fear knocks. A child does not need all the words in the language to speak to its mother. One word will do, mother, and all the love floods forth. So with you. Say it, mean it, stand in it. I and the Father are one. Remember now, practice is not mental repetition for results. Practice is inner yielding until the motive changes from getting to being. If you repeat your truth and then peek out the window to see if the world has saluted, you are still in commerce. Lay down the stopwatch. Lay down the verdicts. Let the words sink until they are no longer words, but atmosphere. Until the clutch relaxes, the bargaining voice grows quiet, and a humble recognition dawns. God is being God as me. From that quiet, movement will come, clean, simple, unforced. Not to get, but to give. That is the doorway we are opening now. Now what does this do to the life? It turns the hand that was clutching, that was counting, that was testing the wind to see if it paid, opens. And when it opens, it discovers its function. Giving is not a program of charity. Giving is the nature of spirit expressing. Giving attention, full, unhurried, without the mind on its watch. Giving forgiveness, unbilled, unadvertised. Giving prayer, that is, recognition of God where the world says, problem. Giving patience in the hour when impatience could purchase a result. Giving integrity when a small twist would secure an advantage. This is casting your bread upon the waters, not as bait, not as investment. Casting, because the sea of God within must pour, or it stales. All right. Do you see how this purifies seeking? When I seek to know God that God may live as me, I cannot bargain for protection. I can only be an avenue for presence. And avenues give. They don't hoard the traffic. Then it begins in small ways, giving a penny, a nickel, a dime. Giving time when the schedule argues against it. Giving prayer where gossip would find a quicker fellowship. Giving forgiveness where memory brings a perfect case. Giving compassion where judgment feels clever. Giving the right to be wrong, yes, yes, so that another may learn without paying me a tribute. And as this becomes natural, not willed, not posed, you will notice the old inner surveyor growing quiet. The tape measure drops. Because the self that needed protection has been relieved of duty. God is the source of my being and the infinity of my being. Since I am one with my source, I need not protect what I am. I express what I am. Now listen to two prayers and feel their centers. God, give me peace. That is a demand upon effect. It presumes absence and pleads for shipment. The ear is at the door, waiting for silence to descend so it can say, "It worked." The other, Father, let thy peace be. Make me an avenue. That is communion. That is recognition. It does not try to draw peace in. It yields to peace as the fact, and at once it overflows into the tone of the voice, into the hand upon a shoulder, into the restraint that refuses a brilliant retort. There are no detached outer effects. When the motive is recognition, the atmosphere becomes benediction, and the room knows it even if no one names it. Do not confuse this with self-improvement. This is not the personality polishing its halo to earn points. This is evidence. Evidence that you have touched inner supply. Evidence that the spring has risen and must run its course. And therefore you can rest. You are no longer giving to get. You are no longer keeping a ledger, glancing back over your shoulder to see if the waters have returned your bread stamped and sealed. Lay down the stopwatch. Cast and go your way. Act cleanly. Speak truthfully. Serve quietly. And let God be God as you. In that rest, without your managing, effects align by law. And you will find that as you pour, you are not emptied. As you forgive, you are not diminished. As you give the right to be wrong, you are not made unsafe. Source recognized is supply revealed, and supply revealed knows only to flow. That is the seek that stops measuring and starts pouring. Now let us feel the fruit of this reversal. The mind that was on the lookout, peering through the blinds of circumstance, waiting for a sign to say, "It worked," comes to a halt. Not the collapse of fatigue, the stillness of recognition. The ear that strained for footsteps outside turns inward and hears the steady truth, already mine. And with that, the nervous bargain dissolves. Serene, I fold my hands and wait, not as a lazy soul postponing duties, but as one who knows the law and trusts it. My own shall come to me, not because I deserve, because in oneness, what is mine is already included in what I am. Now don't confuse waiting with passivity. No. Waiting is not sloth. It is listening. Waiting refuses to use force, fear, or manipulation to push life into shape. Waiting will not bend a truth to close a deal. Waiting will not flatter to secure affection. Waiting will not bribe the body with constant checks to feel safe. Waiting is inward poise, alert, ready, obedient to the slightest nudge of spirit. And when that nudge comes, movement is clean, simple, immediate. Passivity is inertia. Waiting is attention. Do you see the difference? All right, here are the everyday proofs. In business, the old hunger to make the numbers behave drives men and women to promise more than they can do, to shave the truth, to call 3 times when once would have been service. But when consciousness is quiet, the call is made once, clearly, honestly, and then there is rest. If the order is yours by law, it appears. If not, you bless and release it without bruise, because you are not living by that order. You are living by God. The very atmosphere of the office changes. Colleagues sense there is no hook in your handshake. Doors open that you did not pound because there is nothing in you demanding a prize. In relationship, the need to be reassured every hour gives way to presence. You listen without loading the conversation with a silent invoice. You can let a loved one have a bad day without making it an indictment. You do not bait with withdrawal or purchase with gifts. You give the right to be wrong, and strangely, rightness begins to appear without your policing, because pressure has left the room. There are no detached outer effects. A calm center writes itself as a calm home. In matters of health, the obsession with numbers softens. You take sensible care, yes. You keep your appointment, perhaps. But you refuse to make the chart your oracle. Gratitude replaces surveillance. The body, no longer managed by fear, often responds with ease, and even when it does not, peace governs the experience. The terror is gone. Why? Because life is not in the figures. Life is in God. Now let us accept this. When seeking becomes communion rather than control, trust is born. You stop asking the world to certify your prayer. You stop posting your hope on the bulletin board of events. And then something larger happens. Listen, when you no longer use God as a means, you no longer use people as means. The same rest that ended manipulation of heaven ends the little manipulations of earth. Contracts are cleaner. Promises are simpler. Politics at the dinner table loses its teeth. The market mind, get, finds no employment in you. And that is the beginning of another order of life together. We will take that up, because what heals the private heart must soon heal the public square. For now, let the hands rest, let the breath lengthen, let the inner ear listen. Serene, I wait, not to make something happen, but to see what already is, and to move when love moves. Now widen the lens and do not flinch. The same motive that bargains with God bargains with life. The same inward itch to get, safety, position, proof, when multiplied by 10, becomes office politics. By 100, market manipulation. By 1,000,000, foreign policy. All competition is based on getting. All right. When an individual does it, we excuse it as survival. When a corporation does it, we dignify it as growth. When a nation does it, we sanctify it as strategy. But do you see? There is no new substance in it. The consciousness is the same. Use the other as a means. Secure the prize. Name it noble if you must. And there are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Therefore, bargaining at the altar becomes bargaining in the boardroom. Bargaining in the boardroom becomes bargaining with borders. And the world lives under the tension of a deal that can never close. Now listen deeper. A people that fears lack will sanctify acquisition. A people that worships security will export its terror as preemptive force. A church that seeks numbers to prove its blessing will march with banners to prove its God. That is not holiness. That is commerce in religious clothes. Our mission, they say, while the ledger underneath reads control, advantage, reputation, votes. Respectable motives that still smell like getting. And by the same law that governs your living room, that consciousness must write itself in public as exploitation, resentment, and finally, conflict. Law, not fate. Where then is the social expression of pure seeking? It is non-violence at its root, not a tactic, not public theater, but an inner law. I will not use another as a means, not even for a noble end. I will not demand your agreement to verify my faith. I will not injure you to ensure me. That stance is not passivity. No, no. That stance is the power of innocence. Do you remember Daniel? In him, innocency was found. And for that reason, the lions could not do their natural work. Why? Because there are no detached outer effects. Lions are the objectification of fear and hate. Remove fear and hate, and the outer has no commission. So it is with society. The moment a soul stands in non-hate and non-fear, not posing, not campaigning for applause, but truly refusing inwardly to make a person or a people a means, something happens. An invisible law answers. Greater is he that is within you, and the roaring mouths shut. You say, but what of armies? What of tyrants? All right, try it at scale. If we, within range of my voice, truly surrendered the right to injure in order to be safe, if we said, take my job, take my standing, take even my life if you must, but I will not take yours. There is a law of God that would stop them dead in their tracks. Inside of 30 days, the idea would begin to rise in homes and offices you will never visit. Inside of 60, it would trouble councils and editorial rooms. Inside of 90, it would appear as proposals that refresh the air. Not because we wrote them, but because consciousness is causal and must externalize. We here could stop all future wars, not by speeches, but by becoming a field in which no bargain can live and no enemy can be found. Do not mistake me. We are not here to fix the world with moral talk. We are here to change consciousness, because that is causation. Begin where we can be absolute, in the secrecy of our own being. Expose the hidden deal. I will use you to complete me. Lay it on the altar with its respectable names. Replace it with one truth. I and the Father are one. Therefore, I need no tribute. From that center, you will not use God as means, and you will not use man as means. And peace will not be your project. It will be your atmosphere. Then watch quietly as the lions that prowled the headlines lose their teeth. Not by our argument, but by a law older than history and nearer than breath. Now we come to the private work, and I am going to ask you to do something plain and immediate. Go home. If necessary, sit up all night and ask yourself, without ornament and without fear, what am I really seeking God for? Not what would look good in a testimony, the real reason. Let the answer come up like a child called by name. Security, control, revenge, superiority, certainty, exemption from pain, a guarantee of being loved. All right, let them come. A human being can't help that at first. Do not be ashamed. Shame is another bargain. If I hide the reason, perhaps God will bless me anyway. No. Bring it out. Put the words on your lips. Say them to God openly, because there are no detached outer effects and there are no hidden inner causes. What is unconfessed governs. What is confessed is already loosening. Then, when it stands in the light, surrender the deal. Do it in words so simple the bargaining mind cannot hide in poetry. Father, I do not come to use you. I come to know you. I come to be used by you. Say it once. Say it twice. Say it until something in you believes you mean it. And if the old voice whispers, "Yes, but be careful," you will lose protection. You will lose your edge. Answer it with the law we have been quoting. All that the Father hath is mine, already mine. Since I am one with my source, nothing can be added to me, and nothing can be taken from me. The deal fails in the face of already. Now a practice, not for someday, tonight. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. No heroics. Close the door, close the eyes if you wish, and take one statement of truth. One only. I and the Father are one. Or, God is the source of my being and the infinity of my being. Hold it as you would a child, not to get a performance, but to know its life. When the mind demands results, do not argue, do not measure. Return to this. God is, therefore I rest. Again and again. In the afternoon, if fear knocks, give it 30 seconds of the same. Not to fix the weather or the market, to end the transaction inside you. Do not look out the window to see if it worked. That is commerce. Look within to see if the clutch has softened. That is communion. And if it has not softened, remain. 2 minutes more. 5 if necessary. God is, therefore I rest. Make this your little rule for a week. Expose, surrender, practice. Each morning before you touch the world, expose the reason if a new one has crept in. Each evening before you sleep, surrender the day's deals that formed on the tongue before you noticed. And always, always, return to one truth, not many, until the motive is washed. Do not try to renovate your life by policy. Let one realized truth do the dissolving. Truth is one. It does not need assistance. And let us end with clarity. So the mind cannot remake a person into a project. Christ is a state of consciousness, fearless, non-hating, non-grasping. Christ is the awareness that uses nothing and no one as a means, because it knows source within. In the degree that you and I touch it, even a little, the reason dissolves without drama, and God is revealed where we had placed a demand. Then our seeking is no longer a reach for results. It is communion. Then our living is no longer measured by what returned. It is overflow. And by the law that has been our anchor, outer effects must answer to that center. Serene, we fold our hands and wait, not to make, but to witness. And we rise when love moves.